Welcome to Now and Forever, a series of 10-minute reflections on apostolic spirituality. We call it Good News Spirituality. Sponsored by the Charles and Catherine Free Family Foundation, headquartered in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and brought to you from Our Lady of the Sacred Heart Church here in Watertown, New York. With me again is Vicki Phillips. Hi, Vicki.
Hi, Father.
And Pat Henry. Pat?
How are we doing, Father?
We're doing well. And they're both members of the choir, and Pat is in charge of the confirmation program. Today we're going to begin with the real core message. We're going to talk about evangelization. That's what this is all about. That's what Good News Spirituality is, sharing the good news of God's love. Now, evangelization is a term that has been questioned, and Pat, you're going to start us off with why people were against the use of this word.
We're going to try.
Okay.
Among an assortment of reasons raised against the use of the word evangelization, we find the complaint that it is reminiscent of the term evangelicals. St. John the Apostle is known to be one of the four evangelists. Even so, he wasn't one of those known today as an evangelical. Folks who rest their entire faith on the literal interpretation of the Bible to the exclusion of all else. St. John's faith embraced the recognition of the primacy of Peter. The most compelling scriptural evidence of the apostolic belief is found at the end of St. John's Gospel, paradoxically denying the primacy of Peter, as modern evangelicals do, amounts to denial of the gospel itself.
Okay, so what we're starting out here with is a justification of the use of the word even evangelization, and the fact that there were a group of people known as evangelicals who they really rest their belief on a literal interpretation of the Bible. Now the problem with that is that if everybody wants to interpret the Bible as the only measure of our faith, well, then you can reach 30,000 different, because that's how many different denominations there are today. The Catholic Church believes that in interpretation of the Bible, you have to take into account the history of the church itself, because if the church is the true church, you'd have to bear evidence that it's living up to all that which is contained in the gospel. And if the church who claims to be the church does not live up to what the early traditions of the church held, then that's the way you say, well, that just isn't right. Now, further to this, one of the problems with just a literal interpretation of the Bible to the exclusion of all else is that a lot of people get a little nervous about that, because the fact is, if you have faith but you don't have reason, you don't have faith. I mean, if there's nothing in our faith that goes contrary to reason. Of course, reason doesn't give us all that we can know from faith, but the two are, if you don't have reason, you don't have faith, and if you have faith and you don't have reason, you don't have faith. You can't have one without the other. And this goes farther down the line when you see whether you're going to if you disregard the history of the church or make up your own history, you really don't have the church. The primacy of Peter, as we'll see presently, is the key element here as to what constitutes the church. So, Vicki, take us forward to the next, this next paragraph here. We're going to go furthermore to justify the use of this term, even evangelization.
Should we then refuse to use a perfectly descriptive word only because it's been misapplied in a narrow and improper way? During the Cold War, with countless communist fronts advocating peace, any Catholic who spoke out for the cause of peace was suspected of being pink. In truth, Pope Pius X and Benedict XV were ardent advocates of peace, a theme stressed by every other pope before, during, and after Vatican II. For decades, the communists, masquerading as lovers of peace, had kept us from the express practice of a virtue essential to every Christian, that of being peacemakers.
So there we have it. You can have misapplied words and stuff, and communists did masquerade as lovers of peace, but that was just a front. So the third paragraph here, and that's what we only have a couple of minutes left here, but the third paragraph is where we're going to really take a look at what the issue is here. So, as the people of God, under the new covenant, ratified by the blood of Christ, we are a gospel people. That's what the word evangelization would have us be. We have no excuse to shy away from embracing this verbal concept, regardless of how it's been misused, because it sums up the radical identity and purpose of the church. As Pope Paul VI wrote, the church exists in order to evangelize. That can't happen unless we are first transformed by the gospel message, the good news of God's boundless love, and then live and share that message with others. So that's what we're talking about here. Good news spirituality is God's love that we accept. And in the acceptance of that, we experience a transformation that equips us and empowers us to share that faith with others. If we don't accept God's love, then of course we are not empowered, because we don't have the inspiration and the guidance and the affirmation that comes from a realization that God indeed does love us. And so when we're talking about good news spirituality, that's what we're really talking about. Mm-hmm. And we'll get to discuss it at greater length or depth as we continue. But just to get us off to the right start, when we talk about evangelization, that's talking about good news spirituality. The acceptance of that good news should be a transformative or transforming experience that then equips us to really use our faith and our reason. And when we use, here's the way things work. If you don't have reason, how do you could believe in anything. You could have superstition. Reason keeps you away from falling off on this side or that, because God gave you the gift of intelligence as well as the gift of faith. So one can't contradict the other. Now, if you have reason, but unfortunately you may not have morality, then what happens is that when you enter into any form of immorality, like deceitfulness or conceit or untruthfulness or moral impropriety, you compromise your reason. You will become starting to rationalize why you do. They say the saying, if you don't live what you believe, pretty soon you're going to believe what you live. And that holds true. So now, if you have reason, but your morals are against really reason, that it's against truth and that sort of thing, you're going to lose your reason. Now, how do you go about losing your morals? Again, one of the reasons that people lose their morals is that they allow the gift of the emotions to mislead them. If you don't use your gift of emotions to really practice fidelity and loyalty and virtue and so forth and so on, your emotions will take you in the opposite direction. They'll take you in what they call the carnal dimension, the needy materialistic dimension. So there you are. You wipe out the whole process of what it means to be fully human, and in order to really come to an appreciation of your identity, your purpose, and that depending on your perspective on life, if you see the good news of God's love as essential to your life, that's the way you're going to live. And if you don't, you're going to live whatever perspective you have. If it's just materialism or whatever, hedonism, pleasure is all they're going to have, and just clutch at Rudolph Aird flies, avarice, and everything else, you're done. So that's where our starting point then is evangelization, the good news of God's love. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope to see you very soon. Take care, and God bless.